Welcome back to the Be a Force podcast, brought to you by BSquared Management. I am your host, Melissa Lopez, and today I'm with singer, songwriter, guitarist, poet, actress, healer, published author, and I feel like so much more because she's doing it all. It's Kendra Muecke. How are you, Kendra?
Hi, thanks so much for having me on your podcast today. I'm really good, thank you. How are you?
Good. I don't know how you do so many things. I feel like just 3 of them is a lot, and you've got at least 6, 7, 8 things you've got going on. So of all of the things that you have been focusing on, which one would you say is currently the one that has been driving you the most?
Well, all these different facets of my artistic self play into one another, so that's really cool. Like, I do change hats quite often, but they play into each other. So, for instance, my singer-songwriter aspect of myself is what's at the forefront right now, but that totally plays into my writer and poet side and playing the guitar and stuff like that, and as well as I do healing work through my music. So to answer your question, my music.
Your music right now is at the forefront, but that's not to diminish, of course, all of the other things that you've got going on and that you've worked very hard on. So you've got an upcoming EP of Always, and It's coming out on September 6th. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Totally. I'm super excited about this music release. So my first album was titled Of Vinyl. This one is Of Always. The theme of this one is kind of like saying that I will always be there for like that inspiration that moves me. You know, it's a balance between a lament for love and an ode of hope, saying, there's times where the relationship with the muse can be challenging, but that's like what I love most about it. So it's my way of saying my relationship to, this universal love, I'll always be here. I'm super spiritual, which probably comes across in my answer to that.
Yeah.
As well as the genre is going to be like, I say it's kind of like go Western or go home singer-songwriter style. So it's acoustic guitar with, kind of like Americana lyrics over it.
So I noticed you also have another album you're working on of Thank You. Is there something about the Of leading title that connects all 3 of them?
Yeah, so I decided I think that I'm going to make all my albums of yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
It seems to be a pretty good theme. My first book of poetry that came out in 2017 is titled The Politics Of. So it's kind of like tying all of my creative titles together. So Of Thank You is going to be in that similar like Western style Americana. And actually, so this EP of Always is kind of an adjacent release to Of Thank You. But I thought it was not exactly what I was going for to title the EP of You're Welcome. So, but that's where the title Of Always comes from. Like, oh my gosh, thank you so much for holding the door for me. And you're like, oh, always. For sure. Oh. You're welcome.
So what about Of Vinyl? Since that was your first one, now how does that one tie into the other 2?
Okay, so Of Vinyl, that title is a play on, like vinyl records, and I'm heavily influenced by the 1960s and 1970s, like the heyday of rock and roll, in my opinion. And during those days, of course, you'd go to the record store, so I hear, and get vinyl, legitimate records. I mean, I guess it might be funny if when I do a 90s style album to do like Of compact disc. But yeah, so it was my first album. It's an organic approach to the heartlands of love. Like, that love is a really big theme in my day-to-day life. And I think Of Vinyl was a good first title, because it's like, this is where my musical roots come from, are the days of vinyl, and this would be of that same type of influence.
Okay, that makes sense. Also, I would like to vote for Of compact disc at some point. I think Of compact disc would be amazing, because it's such our truth, right? So vinyls were their thing and CDs were our thing. So I know you went to school and you got a BFA in theater, and then you went to Musicians Institute College for contemporary music, and you studied the independent artist program. Now, did you always want to do music because you started with theater and then you went and did music? Or was it all you wanted to do both and then you just took your time and kind of did one at a time to put it all together?
Great question. So I started in musical theater as like a really young kid. I started at like 4. I saw blonde actress on the TV at 4, and I happened to have like a pink boa on. I like to think of it like I was singing "I'm a Little Teapot" or something, and then I see this lady on the TV, and I was like, "Mom, is that what a movie star is?" And she's like, "Yeah." So then the next week I was auditioning for musical theater. So I started singing and acting at the same time, as far as like vocal lessons and acting lessons go. And then I was introduced to rock and roll in my teenage years. Acting would always be like the backbone, or I guess the theater would always be the backbone of my artistic performance style. So then when it got time to go to college, I went to Pepperdine University for my BFA, and I think it was simply just the notion, of course I was singing during all this time, I just didn't know yet that I was going to be a singer-songwriter, which made it a really cool revelation to have in my 20s, because I write poetry all the time. I love singing, I love acting, and it's like, how can I combine all these things? And I was starting to play the guitar. I was like, how does one combine all these things? And then, like, a ton of bricks, the universe was like, duh, you should just start writing music.
And then you just kind of took it from there and ran with it.
Right. So, so that was kind of just like a process of like, I don't know why it was such like a journey and such a process of being like, is this the right thing for me to do and all that? But once I finally got serious about starting to sing, being a singer-songwriter, then I went to the Musicians Institute here in Los Angeles. It's on Hollywood Boulevard, which is fun. And they taught me recording, marketing, songwriting, the really intense stuff about audio engineering and stuff like that. So then I think like once I really got to learning, because I learned theater growing up. So like I knew everything about the theater. I knew how to hang lights, I knew how to paint scenery, I knew how to be a stage manager, to act, to write. Every single thing that you can do in the theater, I knew how to do. As far as music, I was like, well, I'm a singer. I felt like I needed that backbone of that education. So then when I went to the Musicians Institute, I was like, okay, cool. Like this is who I am too.
And I think it's totally possible and realistic, especially when you're an artist. You just have this creativity flowing through you and you have to get it out. And there's so many different mediums to get it out. And it makes sense that you've kind of taken them all and put them together and created so many great things. I mean, you're doing acting, you're writing poetry. I mean, you have a book, The Politics of, about poetry. It's just full of poetry, essays, and one-act plays, which I think is awesome. Did you have anything in particular that kind of inspired you to write the book?
So I've always loved writing so much, and I knew that I wanted to write a book. Right now, I'm working on a novel, like a memoir novel, which is pretty intense to write. And when I sat down I think I had the idea in 2016 that I wanted to put a book together, I was like, where do I even start? I was 23, and I was like, where do I even, right? Yeah, around there. And I was like, where do I even start? So the most natural step was to take all of my journals, and I think how it came about was I was leafing through my journals with all these intense poems, and I was like, for inspiration, and I was like, wait, since I wasn't ready to write the novel at the time, this is really good material that's just been sitting here, and I just started to type it up and then put them in place next to each other, and everything started to fall in line, and the poems, the one that I decided to put on page 32, and then the one on page 33, I was like, how did I even know that those two wanted to be next to each other? And so it just kind of fell into place with all the hard work and all the experiencing the journey along the way.
And then you went on to write another book that's just a whole long poem.
Yeah.
What would you say was the biggest difference with writing those? Because having different things that you're writing and putting them together and having, the poetry and the essays and the one acts, that's one thing, but it's another thing to write an entire book, and it's called Project Non-Art Operation Clown School, which is a whole long thing. P.S.
Yeah.
Title, awesome. And
Thanks.
it's all about manifesting the things that you want to achieve in your life. So how did you go from writing all these other things to then going, we're going to write a whole long one all about manifesting dreams?
So this is really cool. So since the first book is a collection of poems, like you said, those are from a series of years, and those happen to fit together because the common denominator is me writing the poems, so they all fit together very well. The second book, Project Non-Arc, I was going through an experience that was really confusing and difficult, and so I was like, how do I figure out what's going on with me? How do I like write myself into where I want to be? So I just kind of sat down and started writing forward of how from where I was to where I wanted to get to be, and a lot of it had to do with I felt like I had a lot of like programmed ways of thinking, whether it's whatever it is. I mean, there's so many different ways that the subconscious creates and holds on to the way that we think about things.
Yeah, totally.
So I started just automatic writing. It just was like automatic writing from start to beginning.
So was it more of a, when you do your writing and you just kind of let it flow out of you? And was it more of that type of thing where you just kind of just let it flow out and then it just became this book?
Yeah, totally. Definitely. That's exactly what happened. I mean, I probably sat down. It's broken into 13 parts.
Okay.
I probably sat down about 6 times to write these parts, and then I broke it down a little bit further.
It sounds like it's a journey, and likely a very common journey that we all go through, because we all have these streams of thought where it's just going and going, and we're all going through lots of similar things. We just don't realize that we're not alone in these journeys and the things that we're experiencing. So we need people like you to take the time to sit down and write it all out for us, because we're thinking it, but you're writing it. So we need you to write it and then sing it and act it. And you're totally helping so many people feel what we're all going through, but you're just expressing it for us.
Thank you. And I was inspired by some of the writers that I read before, because I wrote this thing just trying to figure out what was going on with me, and then didn't really think much about it, except for I really liked rereading it, and then I thought it was exactly what I was trying to say. But then I started reading some of the poets that I look up to, like Walt Whitman and Allen Ginsberg, traditional American poets who are a little bit non-traditional at their time, who wrote from where they were, and it was like a tale on how they fit into society, particularly America at the time. And I was like, wow, like this is more than just something that was going on with me. This is kind of something that it continues happening in American history. Like these big notable poets that I happen to look up to sit down and write a poem from point A to point B about where they are in life and how it relates to everyone else.
And it helps the people in the future know about what was happening in life now. So you're kind of making a stamp and almost a capsule for the future generations on what life today, 2019, what it's like, or 2015, what was going on then, and all of that. And it kind of ties it all together, and it gives a point of reference, which, is super important as we're moving forward at a time where we can document so much more now than we could before. So, it's really important that people like you are taking the time to do this. Would you say that there was any one particular person, or, I mean, you mentioned some of the people that you looked up to as far as poetry, but with all of the things that you're doing, you've got so many different creative outlets. Was there any particular moment or person that kind of helped tie it all together for you, that made you feel confident and decide that you were going to go full force into not pursuing just one form of creativity, but several forms?
Oh my gosh. There are quite a few people I look up to. One or two people in particular I can point out as mentors. They happen to be in the field of music and really tie into the field of spirituality and healing work as well. I think that so I don't really want to name any particular names, except for I could tell you, like, I look up to this person for X, Y, and Z, and this person for that. It's, but I can tell you that the biggest support that I had I still have this support, which is awesome. Along the way is friends and family. And, I've got my immediate family who's always there for me, but I also have my musical family as well. So I'm part of this group that, starting from the 1960s, we started by following. I was there. I swear I was there. We started by following the Grateful Dead, and it's like this musical family that's been created that stemmed from the 1960s. And that's been my biggest support system as far as people believing in me and being there for me in the music scene.
I think one of the most important thing to have is your family and friends as support, because it gets tough and it's not an easy journey to follow entertainment, and you're doing so many different versions of it. I mean, you talked about doing healing as well too, so you're really pouring your soul out into the universe, and I can tell you're getting a lot back from it, but just pouring yourself out into the universe is got to be a really tough thing to do, and you're doing it, and you're doing it very, very well. I mean, you've got books, you've got music, you do workshops and healing. I mean, there's so many things you've got going on. So I would love it if you could share with everybody what's coming up for you, how they can reach you, and find out more of all the things you've got going on and coming up in the future.
Cool. Thank you so much. That means so much to hear. It's like it's kind of surreal that having people recognize my efforts and recognize who I am and see me for who I am is super awesome. So I want to thank you for having me on the show and saying that as well. As far as reaching me, you can find me on music streaming platforms. I'm Kendra and the Bunnies. You can find me on Instagram. I'm Ken Bunny. You can reach me by email at writewithkendra@gmail.com. WRITE, Write with Kendra. Also, if you do like a general smoke signal or send a flare in the sky, or like a Batman signal, like a little bunny symbol, I've been known to hop up to where you are and
Love
ask
that.
what's going on.
All right, when I need you, I'm going to send a bunny signal. Thank you so much, Kendra. You've got so much to offer everybody. I strongly encourage everyone, please check Kendra out. Look at everything she's got going on. And then keep an eye out for her memoir, Tale of Fire and Ice, Friend of the Level, that's coming out too. She's got another album coming out. I mean, there's so much on the way for you. So I strongly encourage everyone, please follow. You're a great spirit, and
Thank you.
I can feel your healing powers. It's really awesome. And your workshops, it's just so much. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Thanks again for listening to the Be a Force podcast, brought to you by BSquared Management. I'm your host, Melissa Lopez. And until next time, be a force.